Hi, everybody. It's Kyle Dine here from Equal Eats, and I am just delighted to be joined with George Simons from Free From Travel. Hey, George, how are you doing today?
Hey, Carl, really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. So we actually got to meet face to face, which is very rare in this day and age, at the Free From show in not Southampton, in Birmingham in the
Yeah.
last couple months. How was that experience for you, the show?
It was amazing. It was actually our launch weekend, so it was as hectic as you can imagine, but incredible. Just really great to meet so many people that had lots of different stories about how they travel currently, some of the challenges they're facing, but also I think, we met lots of opportunities to meet a lot of other businesses in this area that are all trying to make the world an easier and better place for people with dietary restrictions, which was really incredible. So yeah, it was a really fantastic experience. Thank you.
Yeah, same. And anytime you go to a trade show or some type of fair for people with dietary restrictions, I'm always amazed at A, how many businesses and supports are out there, and B, how many of us are out there. And it was packed all weekend long. So it was really great to connect with so many people that get it and feel those things that we do.
Well, a personal highlight was also seeing you doing a sing along with the kids as well. So, alongside all the great free from opportunities as well.
Well, thank you. I don't share it often, but outside of Equal Eats, I love music. I'm a children's musician. I love educating about food allergies, and that's a bit of my side hat. But today we're focusing on your new hat, which is Free From Travel, and really just want to learn more about it, more about you. I think the whole thing is very inspiring and needed. So maybe to start off, what is Free From Travel? Walk us through what it is.
So, free from travel, we're aiming to be booking.com for people with dietary restrictions. So, you can find and book holidays that are safe and enjoyable to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm celiac, and we'll talk more about that, I guess, shortly. But I think there's so many amazing options out there, but it's so difficult to find them so often. And what I really wanted to do was try and bridge that gap. So, what we do is we kind of scour the internet to find places that people have been and had a good experience with allergies. We started by focusing on people with celiac, just as a place to start. However, we are also currently actually going back through all of the hotels and expanding them to check for all dietary restrictions, all allergies. And we already had a few questions around that already, but we're really doubling down around that now. But we search for places that people with allergies have already been and had a good experience. We then shortlist them. We reach out to them directly with a set of safety questions and variety questions. So things such as like, are your staff trained? What labeling do you have in place at buffets and at restaurants? If it is a buffet, for example, can I request some food from behind that hasn't been, touched by these people that have got like a pasta spoon over here and then, some nuts over here? All of those sorts of good questions. But then also, especially for people that are, celiac, dairy-free, vegan, things like that, a set of questions around, okay, what at the different restaurants, at the different buffets, what are going to be the options for me? Because it's all well and good at being safe, but I also don't just want to eat plain chicken and a salad for the entirety of my holiday.
There.
And so, yeah, that's what we've done. We've initially focused on all inclusives across Europe, Mexico, and the Caribbean, but we're able to support across lots of different holiday types, destinations. You just drop me an email, and I'm happy to help you find something that's suitable.
Amazing, and there is this information, but it's scattered and it's usually coming from individuals directly. And I help admin the Allergy Travels Facebook group, and there's all these questions. Has anybody been to, enter the country? And you get a lot of different experiences, a lot of different hotels and resorts. And I love the type of standardization that you're trying to implement across the board. That, there are some hotels doing some amazing things, but it's hard to know, and I love that you're trying to put this a lot more front and center in front of our community. But here's the about page. I'm just showing up. I would love to get to know your why behind this in terms of there's a lot of work, a lot of getting in touch and vetting. What brings this out of you? And tell us more about your story.
Yeah, so when I was in my second year of university, I suddenly got really, really ill. I was losing a lot of weight, even though I was eating a typical uni student's diet of pizza and drinking. And we couldn't really figure it out. And after 18 months of testing, I had to have three different biopsies, figured out I had celiac disease.
Oh,
And obviously, at first, it can be quite a challenge to adapt. But over time, I think in my day-to-day life, I feel very comfortable and confident. And it's not, you obviously think about it, but almost like subconsciously, you check the labels, you check what you're going to do, etc. And in the UK, you've got a lot of really amazing options that make it quite easy. I think the challenge was then when I started trying to go on holiday and go abroad, there was a gap, I think, and it's partially safety. You have both a language barrier, but also a cultural barrier. So different places have a different understanding of allergies. Many places they don't even really have a concept of what gluten is. I mean, even in our own countries, people might not necessarily understand what gluten is, and and certainly not celiac. And therefore, I would have to do a huge amount of research. So I would sit down and be like, right, I want to go on holiday. Maybe want to go on an all-inclusive because I don't want to have, I want to not need to cook for a week or 2 weeks. And as you say, you kind of read lots of Facebook groups, you read different websites, you read different reviews. But the challenge is what one person's version of what safety looks like and what good variety looks like is not the same as another person's. Management practices change. You might read a blog, but it might be from 2020, and actually it's now out of date. And the places when you find a hotel that could be suitable, you go on booking.com and actually it's fully booked, it's completely at a price range, or it is closed. That can happen quite regularly. So, in many times I would just get so disappointed and so despondent with it all. I'd either not travel, I'd maybe go self-catered, but it was a disappointing experience.
yeah.
And I know lots of other people were doing that same level of research, but it's difficult when you're an individual because a hotel doesn't necessarily want to answer a load of questions for you as an individual because that's a lot of work and they're super busy. And that's where the kind of idea came from. And I've actually been working on it for about 2.5 years. We only
Wow.
publicly launched about month and a half ago. But yeah, that's where it came from. And as I said, yeah, the goal is to try and be booking.com for people with dietary restrictions.
That's a great lofty goal. And, I'd love to learn more about, from a user standpoint of how it works, but maybe I'm really curious about from the back end of how you're onboarding restaurant or hotels and their dietary staff, because I think it's a huge undertaking to take on, and I commend you for doing it. But walk us through what is your process? What are you asking them? Because I think this is really a cool thing that sets you apart from individuals sharing, oh, we had a great experience. You've made a set of guidelines that they have to follow to be a partner. So tell us a little bit more about that. It sounds great.
Yeah, so how we do it is we have a set of questions, and I can read through some of those
Sure.
questions if that's helpful. And I think the questions that we're typically asking are things like, are all of your menus and buffet allergen labeled? If so, for what allergens? Is it just the top 14 that often, or is it all allergens? Can I get a full ingredient list available for all the restaurant menus and buffet items?
Mhm.
What steps do you have to avoid cross-contamination of allergens? For fried and deep fried food, do you have dedicated fryers, or how do you manage that cross-contamination? For toast, again, how do you manage cross-contamination with toasters? Ovens, are these fan ovens? Are they cooked alongside other food that contains allergens? How do you minimize that risk of cross-contamination? There's lots of others. I mean, we ask, can you, for example, speak to a chef at every meal time? What steps do you need to take in advance of traveling to notify the hotel if you need to? Or do you need to pre-order your food, for example, for lunch and dinner at breakfast time? All
Mhm.
of these sorts of things to really understand. Now, we don't have necessarily a set of guidelines. We just share what the hotels
Okay.
say, and we screenshot what their answers were. So we please do always read through what their answers were. Only book where you feel safe. That said, there is of course, if someone goes, we don't take any steps to minimize the risk of cross contamination, then we're not going to upload them onto the website because obviously that's there, and we try and make that as clear as possible throughout. And we're continuing to try and do more work to make that easier to filter as you go through. But as I said, we screenshot their answers
Great.
and share what they've said so you can boot that. And the other thing is we also share the date that they confirmed those answers. So you
Okay.
can see when was the last time that they've shared that. And we try to recheck yearly to make sure it stays up to date.
Great. And I think, they're all private businesses, and I love what you're doing, at least trying to provide that type of transparency. And then as a user, you can actually make that decision of what you're comfortable with. In terms of your end user, you mentioned it's people that avoid a lot of different foods. It's not just for celiac, but other allergens as well. What is the benefit for them in using this compared to other services? What can they really get to make their life simpler with travel by using Free from Travel?
Exactly that, hopefully. I think it's a bit more freedom and a bit more ease to be able to travel. Well, actually, a lot more, hopefully, freedom and a lot more ease to travel. I think what we're aiming to do is obviously take out a huge amount of the research that would be required, the days and days of work that you would need to do. That's the first step. But also, then once you have booked with us, we take, as long as you've booked more than 2 weeks in advance of the holiday, we'll make sure we've notified the hotel they've got of your allergens. We'll also, if you've got any special requests. So I don't know about you. I love desserts. I love chicken dippers, both ideally by the pool. And where possible, we try and help facilitate some of those special requests, which can sometimes be a bit easier because A, we have additional contacts from a trade perspective, but also because we're coming from an agency perspective rather than an individual perspective, we have a bit more leeway. We can't obviously guarantee special requests, but we do what we can. And then we also, we have looked through lots of reviews, right, of other people from lots of different sources. So we sometimes know some special tips, for example, for people with your allergy special foods that you can request or certain people you need to speak to or things like that. So we inform you of what you need to do and any of those special tips. And I think the final thing is often it can be more expensive to have an allergy, and we do our best to try and be price comparative. Now, it's not a like live thing that we kind of price compare, etc., against different sites, but we have set our pricing so that we ideally are competitive alongside the likes of Booking.com, etc. We're not trying to charge more.
And I think what you're doing here to me, it gives people a really great starting point when it's endless the opportunities to go travel and when you start booking a trip. And it's really hard to define what is it that looks like a successful trip for you? Is it getting the history or the culture of the food? And for our community, it's usually just safety and peace of mind. That's a huge, huge value to going on a trip. And to have a site that actually says, we can help you with that step one. These are spots that you can then focus on the rest of what you need, but we're really giving you a lot of information on these starting points. It's fantastic. I think you're onto something very, very inspiring, and good for you for taking it on. What's your goal? Where is this? Where are you going with this in the next few years, and what do you hope for, and how can we help as a community?
I think where I would love to get to, and actually it's on the About Us page, is A, obviously, is enabling people to really be able to travel to any destination with comfort and ease. And that's for all of us with different dietaries. I think the second is I really want to hopefully make businesses that just on the about page to make businesses that do cater well for people with dietary requirements to make them more successful. It breaks my heart every time that I see a really good restaurant that caters really well for dietary restrictions close down. So I want to try and help make people, not just restaurants, not just hotels. It's just under our missions there on the page. And then the final one is really if we can all kind of consolidate a lot of our power together, ideally through free from travel, I hope to use the power of that community to actually proactively expand the number of hotels, restaurants, and experiences worldwide that accommodate dietary restrictions. My real desire would be to be able to have start moving more in towards certificating different venues and restaurants around different dietary restrictions globally. So actually, you can see it has been certified. I know it hits a certain standard, and I can travel there with confidence. And we're talking to a few different partners around how we might do that and things like that. But that's probably a bit longer term once we have a bit more consolidated power. But that would be what I would love to be able to do again to just give even more confidence and assurance.
Great. Well, we're happy to spread your mission here because I think we share a lot equally to what you're trying to do for a community. And especially I love this term because we have it in our tagline, enjoy food everywhere. And I think that's taken for granted by a lot of people without dietary restrictions, that they just get to enjoy food without the worry and the paranoia. And you add travel to the mix, and there's a lot more to be worried about. So for us, it is trying to make normal experiences and empower people to go across the world and enjoy, just like everybody else does. And I love that you share that and are trying to just make it easier to enjoy this world and take out some of the hard booking research and time and effort required for all of it just to get a great starting point. So, you know, for anybody watching and listening or reading, I think here's a great opportunity to support something that has really great intentions of helping us. And the more people that are part of this and support this business, the more it can grow to really come right back and support you and your family. So, George, thank you very much for spending time and for sharing more about Free From Travel. Sometimes it's just easier to talk versus the about page. So I really appreciated just getting your perspective on everything. Is there anything that you wanted to add, how people can get more info or support in different ways?
Yeah, and well, Carl, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to your community and well, to the joint community. I think it's amazing, and I really appreciate it. The only thing I would say is, as you'll see on the website at the moment, it's been quite geared towards gluten free. As I said, we're opening that up. But if you have multiple allergies, you have different destinations. Maybe you want to go on not it's not an all inclusive. Maybe you want to go on a different type of holiday, anything like that, just drop me an email. My email's on there, but it is also George at Free From Travel, and I'm always happy to help you find what you're looking for. But otherwise, just a big thank you again for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Same. Well, glad we met, George, and wishing you all the best and success and a lot of gluten-free, allergy-safe travels ahead of you.
Thank you, and you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.